Did Tony Khan make a huge mistake in airing the CM Punk Jack Perry backstage footage? Is this the end of AEW? When Tony Khan brought CM Punk back to wrestling after 7 years of who knows what, that was an epic moment for everybody. It was arguably one of the biggest pops that AEW's ever seen and pro wrestling in a long time. AEW brought a lot of people back to wrestling, including myself, got my wife interested in it. AEW also brought CM Punk back to professional wrestling. Go back and watch the first dance and the things that he said. Those were words spoken from the heart. CM Punk truly believed those words, and he seemed to be AEW's number one champion. So, what happened? You see, I don't think Tony Khan had any way of knowing what was going to happen with CM Punk. Punk's presence exasperated a lot of the already existing challenges that AEW has. But I don't think it was intentional. I think that was Punk being Punk. Now, social media was fired up. I mean, one can't deny airing that footage certainly got a lot of people tweeting. Now, a lot of people are chiming in with their thoughts, and some people were saying that this somehow proves CM Punk right. But what does it prove that he was right about exactly? I mean, I listened to the interview, and I mean, he left out some key details. CM Punk would have been right if in the interview with Ariel Hawaii, or whatever his name is, if CM Punk said, I need help, I have anger management issues, I messed up, I'm sorry, then I would have been fine with that. Then I would have said, yeah, I agree. CM Punk could have taken the high road. He didn't. So people are upset with Tony Khan for not taking the high road, but somehow we cheer CM Punk for doing that. Some people are saying, well, we didn't hear the audio. What did Jack Perry say that got Punk so fired up that he would do that? Does that make it okay? What Punk should have done is he should have had his match with Samoa Joe and then have a sit down with Tony Khan, Jack Perry, and talk this out. And perhaps legal, what have you. But instead, he chose to get froggy right before his match with Joe. And if anything, it's unfair to everybody else they're trying to put on a show. Now, I'm no expert, but Punk strikes me as a classic narcissist. And I think we've all seen people like that in our lives. They're always either the hero or the victim. They're never the villain. And in Punk's case, he always tries to come across as either some kind of martyred hero who's somehow misunderstood, but he's fighting the good fight. Did he really fight the good fight with Jack Perry? But see, that's the problem with tribalism. Once one person decides to believe something, it's very hard to convince them that they've been fooled. Some folks are diehard WWE fans and they want AEW to fail, which is silly because AEW's existence makes WWE better. It allows a lot of new opportunities, allows negotiation power for the talent. The talent feel like there's other things they can do. It also forces WWE's product to get better. I mean, look at it now. But there's a lot of those WWE diehards that were foaming at the mouth at this and were ready to hail AEW's downfall. But they're always going to be there. What bothers me are the folks that are obsessed with CM Punk specifically. I'd like to compare it to Donald Trump as I have before. There's such a thing, I think, as punk derangement syndrome. But it's not hatred for Punk, it's obsessively praising him. You know, people need to start wearing hats that say "Make Wrestling Punk Again." But immediately after the segment, there were a lot of Pepsi MAGA folks out there all ready to say what they were going to say anyways. They'd already made up their mind before they watched the footage. And it was funny how most of the tweets were echoing the same phrases. This actually proves Punk right. This is a bad look for AEW. I mean, it was almost like they got together and decided to say the same thing, or they waited for other people to tweet and then just rehashed what they said without actually taking the time to make up their own mind. And that's the problem with tribalism again. When you make up your mind about something before you actually look at the data, it's harder to separate yourself from it. It's harder to change your mind. It's harder to go, maybe the guy was being an asshole. Me, I try not to, but I'm guilty of it. But with Punk, I'm only going off of what I saw. I saw Punk walk up to Jack Perry and then attack him after words were exchanged. What those words were, I don't know. But then he lunged at TK, knocking over monitors. And, from perspective, it could have looked very hairy. But it definitely didn't look like CM Punk made a lunge for him. It wasn't like CM Punk just turned to him and pointed. No, he went for him. People had to hold him back. I also saw and heard what CM Punk said during the all-out media scrum the year earlier, stuffing his face with muffins. I mean, it's one thing to have issues backstage, but vote with your feet. Punk acted like a baby sitting there crying about not getting his way or working with children and being petulant right in front of the guy, the boss. This should have been a closed door interview. I mean, it was tasteless. And regardless of what happened afterwards, regardless of the Bucks going to him, whatever, that doesn't excuse them. And they got suspended too. But that was tasteless. It wasn't the pipe bomb he thought. And I think part of the problem is when Punk made that pipe bomb statement, he had a cause to fight for. But when he got to AEW, I'm not sure. I think he was looking for the cause to fight for. We've all worked with toxic coworkers who always complain about the job. Now, it makes sense and it feels justified when what they're complaining about is something you agree with. But then when things are working fine, they don't have anything to complain about. They start looking for things. And I think that's part of what was driving Punk. That and he was a lot older than he was 7 years prior, and he wasn't able to do the things he thought he could do, or his body couldn't keep up with the myth in his mind. Should AEW have aired the footage? Should TK have allowed this, made this happen? Well, they did, and one could argue that it was unfair to the other people that appear in that footage, besides Punk and Perry, but what's done is done. And, there wouldn't be any footage if Punk had made a better decision in the first place. And Punk actually is the one that brought this back to the surface with his Ariel Hawaii interview. You see, it's kind of like a breakup. And breakups are ugly, and sometimes things get really messy. Could it have been done differently? Yeah. But it's done. Let's not chastise Tony Khan's decision to show the footage while also praising Punk for quibbling about it during his Ariel Hawaii interview. He didn't have to. He could have just told Ariel Hawaii, I'm not going to talk about it, but he couldn't help himself. So, what now? Let's take a cue from Punk's friends FTR and move on. Let's move forward. And if you want to yell at Tony Khan and get mad at him, then let's focus on the biggest mistake he made this past week. Bring Dasha back, Tony Khan.